Vance looked directly at me while chewing his gum like he owned the entire building, and told me that my decade of loyalty did not mean a thing anymore. He openly announced to a room full of executives that his son Todd would be taking over my position by next month. Nobody in that crowded boardroom stood up for me, and the heavy silence was only broken by the rhythmic tapping of his silver pen against the mahogany table. I did not flinch or show a single trace of emotion as Vance continued his loud insult-filled speech about how my traditional methods were holding the company back. If you love your mother and want to support real human stories, take a moment to subscribe right now. Underneath the table, my fingers calmly reached for the small plastic keychain attached to my computer bag and pressed the silent record button to capture his betrayal. The disrespect had been growing for months, starting with sarcastic comments during our public presentations and ending with rude messages sent across the corporate chat system. When I officially reported his hostile behavior to human resources, the representative simply smiled and promised to log the incident for future internal reference. That was corporate speak for doing absolutely nothing, and that was the exact moment I realized I was completely on my own. Soon after that, Vance initiated a massive corporate reorganization that stripped away my access codes and left my name off critical meeting invitations. He officially changed my title from Director of Infrastructure to Legacy System Caretaker, placing my desk miles away from any meaningful company decisions. He even joked to the staff that I was just the janitor for the old software, completely forgetting that those old programs kept the business alive. The truth about massive digital networks is that they do not collapse in a single day, but rather rot silently from the inside until everything stops working. For 9 long years, I had been the invisible force repairing the fragile architecture of this multi-million-dollar enterprise without ever asking for praise or recognition. While Vance spent his days talking about synergy and innovation, I was the only person who knew how to keep the servers running. Instead of getting angry after each public humiliation, I went back to my desk and quietly began documenting every single system modification. I downloaded secure backups, printed physical copies of compliance logs, and meticulously verified that my legal signature was nowhere near any of the new projects. I also activated a hidden automated protocol inside the network framework that would trigger under one highly specific condition if leadership changed without proper authorization. The trap was set, and the end arrived on a rainy Thursday morning when Vance called me into conference room C for an unscheduled meeting. He leaned against the glass table with a smug expression, flanked by a nervous human resources representative named Sharon who held a thick termination packet. Vance told me the company was moving in a fresh direction and that my position was being eliminated effective immediately to make room for Todd. I did not argue, cry, or demand an explanation when they told me that Todd would be taking over my entire department. I simply gathered my personal items, handed my security badge directly to Sharon, and walked out of the building without saying goodbye to a single colleague. As I sat in my car inside the dark parking garage, my phone buzzed with a confirmation that my automated compliance clock had officially started ticking down. By Monday morning, Todd had moved into my old office, bringing a laptop and a scented candle while bragging about how he would eliminate our legacy infrastructure. He immediately cancelled the mandatory vendor reviews and threw all our complex workflow charts directly into a recycling box beneath his desk. Todd told the remaining engineers that if a system could not be explained in 60 seconds, it was too complicated to exist in his new modern era. The digital infrastructure did not care about the confidence of Todd, and the consequences of his ignorance appeared almost immediately. Within 48 hours, key contractor payments were frozen due to missing security metadata that my old manual overrides used to approve. 2 senior software developers lost their administrative access codes during a routine server refresh, and the main customer database began duplicating thousands of error logs every hour. While I sat peacefully on my back porch reading a book, my former assistant Ryan kept sending me frantic text messages about the unfolding disaster. The new leadership had completely lost the master system schema, and the corporate executives were locked out of the secure floors after Todd tried to bypass the badge scanners. Every single warning was ignored because Todd was too busy sending company-wide emails celebrating his new streamlined vision. The real crisis emerged when a compliance officer named Miriam noticed that the mandatory federal regulatory review was scheduled for the upcoming week. This was a strict legal deadline that required immaculate documentation to preserve our corporate liability insurance coverage. When Miriam sent an urgent email asking for the required paperwork, Todd replied with a short message stating that they did not need those dinosaur processes anymore because they were running agile. At exactly 3 o'clock that afternoon, my automated system detected that my name had been missing from the compliance chain for 2 consecutive weeks. The digital entity did not care about office politics, so it immediately emailed a massive 17-page liability transfer document directly to the board of directors. This official report contained my digital signature alongside a legal fallback clause, shifting all financial and criminal responsibility for the upcoming audit to Vance. On Friday morning, Vance was filled with confidence because he believed he was about to impress the billionaire chairman of the board, Arthur Sterling, who was visiting in person. Vance and Todd entered the executive suite with a minimalist slideshow presentation, completely unaware of the digital landslide heading their way. The room was packed with terrified managers, anxious legal advisors, and silent engineers who knew that a massive catastrophe was about to unfold. The door swung open and Arthur Sterling walked inside, carrying a printed copy of the automated compliance document rather than his usual digital tablet. The chairman did not offer a polite greeting, but instead looked around the cold room and immediately demanded to know why my nameplate was missing. Vance smiled nervously and explained that I had been replaced by fresh blood, pointing proudly to his silent son who sat by the podium. Arthur Sterling dropped the printed pages directly onto the table in front of Vance and asked him if he understood the legal reality of what he had done. The chairman explained that my safety protocol dictated that any leadership change within the audit window transferred total personal liability to the initiating executive. Vance watched in absolute horror as our head corporate attorney, Claire, confirmed that the strict accountability document was entirely valid and completely binding. The boardroom erupted into absolute chaos as Ryan presented live analytics proving that the entire corporate network was actively failing the federal safety checks. Todd was stripped of his security badge on the spot, while Vance sat frozen in his chair as the reality of multi-million-dollar fines settled over his shoulders. The chairman ordered an immediate emergency restoration of my original digital infrastructure, realizing that my supposedly outdated code was the only thing protecting them. Miles away from the corporate madness, I walked along a quiet mountain trail with a thermos of warm coffee, completely disconnected from the digital world. My phone eventually received a desperate message from the personal assistant of the chairman, offering me an incredibly lucrative consulting role on my own terms. I did not reply immediately, choosing instead to enjoy the peaceful silence of the forest while the system I built delivered total justice.